Yeah. What's up? This is the Wardawg. Welcome to Comic Book Theater with my co-host JR. What's going on, JR?
What's up, Wardawg?
Not much, brother. Not much. Today we've got a bit of an end of the year type of show. We're going to talk about some of the cool things that happened this year. John, I'll pass it on to you, and you tell us where we start.
Yeah, man, we do. We've got a packed show because it's been a crazy year for nerds. 2019 is going to go down in the record books as one of the most event-filled as far as TVs, comics, just everything was at the forefront, it seemed like, this year. And there was no slowing down, honestly. We were kind of looking at it from the very beginning of this year. I mean, we might as well start with the big hitters, to be honest with you, man. There's a list of movies that are just insane for this year. We were talking about just the Marvel Disney movies. I think, what we come up with, final count there, Todd, $5 billion movies for Marvel this year, something like that.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't Marvel. It was Disney because they had
You're
Frozen
right.
2. I think that was $1 billion one. So I mean, it was Captain Marvel and Endgame, and of course, I mean, you got to put Endgame up there as one of the top movies of the year for sure.
Of course, of course. Spider-Man: Far From Home, which is a Sony in conjunction with Disney. Um, some of the ones or at least one of the ones in my opinion, that flew way under the radar, and this is one of them that in the trilogy, you had to really remind people, no, this is a superhero trilogy here, guys, is Glass. It's kind of unfortunate a little bit, in my opinion, it came out in 2019. If it had come out in almost any other year, it would have been heralded as one of the best superhero movies of the year, but it's in such a crowded field, you know?
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I mean, Glass was one of the best endings of a trilogy, I think, because the second one in that series was lost me a little bit, but then Glass was just a beautiful ending, and it was sad that it even had to end. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you bring up Glass. I know you haven't seen Brightburn yet, I think,
Nope.
but I mean, Brightburn was like this, alternate Superman where the kid's actually bad, and it's got this horror gore. Like when you'd go to the store and you'd look in the Fangoria magazines, I mean, it was that kind of like gore. Um,
Right.
and I would put that up there. What are your other choices?
Another choice for, I mean, obviously, like we said, talked about Endgame being just insane, and Spider-Man: Far From Home. I want to touch on it a little bit more because I enjoy the fact that Spider-Man was at the forefront and that they finally came back to a deal between Sony and Disney to keep Spider-Man in the MCU. I think that was a huge deal. Um, you know, Captain Marvel was 2019 as well. We've we've had mixed reviews on it. Even Rotten Tomatoes is at like 78%. It was an okay flick, but my opinion, it was forgettable. It wasn't really rewatchable. I've watched it once. I watched it in theaters with my kids and haven't really considered it again. But we know it was $1 billion flick. You enjoyed it okay, didn't you, Todd?
Yeah, actually, I thought it was better than I expected. I mean, after all the Brie Larson stuff that came out, I was a little bit hesitant to watch it. I don't normally go to the theater unless it's like something like Endgame or Star Wars. So it wasn't like the whole Brie Larson thing wasn't a case of me not going to the theater because of that. It was just I finally watched it and I thought it was definitely better than what I heard. There was the one disappointing thing is like Annette Bening is Marvel, and that was just done wrong. And I really couldn't stand the "I'm just a girl" part in that. I mean, I like the '90s music, but that song was just really freaking annoying at that part. There's better songs.
Well, I agree with that. I will also say that, and then this is kind of our show and year in review as well. We talked about it. Me and Josh Sheldon for sure did. They could have had a trilogy of Captain Marvel if done correctly, and they could have built to that $1 billion. And in the end, had Brie Larson be the Captain Marvel and play a more significant role. They started it at least 4 years too late. And but like you say, start with somebody, start with Captain Marvel, and tell that story. Tell the story of a fall from grace, a passing of the torch, and you can, but introduce Brie Larson as Ms. Marvel, and then you could have had Camilla Khan show up in a third movie, had a trilogy there, and been just like over like Rover, as as the old saying goes here in the Ozarks. It doesn't make sense to me to not maximize that, but again, that's my opinion. Who am I to say? They made $1 billion on it.
Yeah,
Got let.
yeah, and they had a great 10-year run. I mean, so they threw that one in to fit her into the Endgame story. And to be honest, I thought Brie Larson played the character pretty well. I think her attitude. I mean, you can't expect every female character or every male character to have that same laughy attitude, and she had kind of this cocky type of attitude, and I thought it fit her pretty well.
And honestly, I will say that you guys know me. I'm more of the back issue, bronze, copper, '90s reader. That's where I'm at. I'll tell you right now though that having tried to catch up on a few more modern titles this weekend, one of them being Immortal Hulk, I actually have the first 10 under my belt, which, man, amazing. It was really, I should have got on that bandwagon, Todd. You've got me convinced now for sure. Anyway, reading those first 10 and even having seen Captain Marvel and her part in that story helped me to understand that, yeah, she's a little bit more of that cocky, like, no nonsense, this is the way things are going to be kind of leader. It seemed like, at least whenever they were talking about Gamma Flight, and her helping out with Alpha Flight and the Avengers. Anyway, that's just some of the comic book stuff. And guys, don't worry, we will get to the comic book stuff here in a little bit. One of the other ones that I consider a nerd movie, but it was a movie before it was a comic book, is John Wick 3. Now, I'm going to compare this movie and one other movie, and I'm just going to kind of throw it out there. John Wick 3 and the Joker. I've seen John Wick 3. I've not yet seen the Joker. The outcry for the violence in the Joker is patently absurd to me compared to the violence that was in John Wick 3. The body count in John Wick 3 and the sheer brutality of some of those murders, it was over the top, man. It was way over the top. And the way I understand from people who've seen the Joker, 6 people, he killed 6 people, something like that. And yes, some of them were graphic, but like you say, the body count for John Wick 3 was astronomical.
You,
I
you
don't.
know, it's pretty sad. I haven't seen any of the John Wick films,
Oh man,
and I probably should sit down and watch them. I'm always looking for a movie to watch.
they tell a reasonably good story. Like you say, John Wick 3, the body count just got ridiculous. It got, for my taste, got a little absurd. just my taste. Now there again, mind you, he's an assassin. He's the best assassin ever. So of course that what do you expect? He's going to kill people, and he's going to kill them in creative ways. Like you say, I really think more along the lines for Joker. Again, I haven't seen it, but it sounds like the murders in Joker are more believable, like as in you could literally see your next door neighbor committing something like this. Like the acting was done so well, the writing was done so well that they could be like, "Oh man, that's Steve down the block, man. That guy could really murder somebody. That scares the crap out of me." Now there again, I haven't seen
Yeah,
Joker, but that's the reports I'm hearing.
yeah. Well, I mean, Joaquin Phoenix usually performs pretty well. I haven't seen the Joker yet, too. I'm really really excited for it to come out on video. As soon as it does, I'm gonna grab it. But I mean, I mean, that film like made $1 billion, and they spent like very little money on that. I mean, that was a huge success. But to
Yeah.
get away from the murder thing, I just finally watched Shazam, and I thought that was really a fun movie as well.
Shazam
Zach
was
Levi did a great job.
Oh yeah. It was Shazam was terribly underrated, man. Like people some people were comparing it to Deadpool because of the tongue in cheek and the comediness of it and some of that to it. I didn't really see Deadpool in it, but I did see a movie that did not take itself too seriously and was a really good time. And it's on my DVR, and I've already watched it twice. So again, talking about rewatchability, I don't think you can beat a movie like that that doesn't take itself too seriously, but is good and is just fun. Another one though that we didn't really talk that much about, and I think it's probably because the reviews were so poor for it, was X-Men Dark Phoenix.
Mm, yeah, I
Um,
haven't seen that one because the reviews were so bad.
yeah, same here, same here. It's kind of that final nail in the coffin of that whole what was going on at Fox. Disney buys them. They're definitely rebooting it. It just again one of those movies where you're like, wait till it comes out on Blu-ray. Wait till I can rent it and only spend $2 or $3 for me and the fam to watch it. That way, if it really is as bad as advertised, I don't feel quite so ripped off.
You
Eh,
know, there's one movie that you haven't seen that I've seen, The Rise of Skywalker. That one is another potential Disney billion-dollar film, and there's been mixed reviews on that one. I thought I thought it was an enjoyable film, but the whole trilogy was kind of just a mess, and it's kind of a forgettable trilogy in my opinion. Also, I mean, J.J. Abrams had to clean up after Ryan Johnson's mess in The Last Jedi, and I give him props. I mean, I would have not wanted to have to direct this movie after what Ryan Johnson did, because he closed all the loops.
Well, and that's my understanding too. I've watched a couple of those, and you're right. It does feel as though the only thing that's going to keep Disney from having that be a $1 billion movie in 2019 is the fact that we're only a few short days away from the end of 2019, and they're only halfway there. Um, you know, we talked about it before with Milk Dog last week, actually, about how that they say that this is the end. There's no more Star Wars after this or whatever. I don't buy that for a second. I just don't. It's a cash cow. The Mandalorian is hot right now. If they find the right director and the right writer to do some of these one-off stories like Solo, they will. There's just too much money not to do it. There just is. And I think I think that's what really, at the end of the day, we're talking about is those guys are in it to make money, and I think there's too much money left on the table if they don't.
Well, yeah. Do you mind a spoiler here? I
I don't
mean,
mind a
the
spoiler.
spoilers.
Look, I've
So,
already done the reviews, like seen the spoiler reviews on YouTube. So you're not spoiling me. Anybody else that's going to be watching, guys, we'll talk about it. We're going to spoil it. Just know, guys, it's been well over a week since it's been out. Not that big of a deal. You've been warned.
yeah. See, there's two mistakes that I think that Disney made with this film, or two possibilities that they had. At the very end of the film, Palpatine shows up. I don't know. I mean, that's probably not much of a spoiler.
No.
I thought I thought he was just. I didn't like it, and I thought that they should have had another villain kind of playing, just using that as a ruse. And then he fights, he kills Kylo, he battles Ray to a standstill, does like a force push, and then takes off kind of like Count Dooku style. And that would have been a nice roll into like, oh, you would have walked out of the theater like, oh, what's going to happen next? And then the
Right.
other thing is at the very end of the movie, a lady asks Ray what her name is, and she says Ray, and she says the old lady says Ray what, and she says Ray Skywalker, but Ray was actually a Palpatine. So I think that
Yes.
was another missed opportunity. They could have, if she would have said Ray Palpatine, everybody would have walked out of the theater like, holy crap, what do we have planned for the future? And then
Right.
you don't have to dish these characters. You can continue to use them.
No, I get that, and I I like the idea of giving her that flaw of being a Palpatine, because that's a major flaw for all Star Wars fans. You don't, you can't be related to Palpatine and not have a major pull to the dark side, which they did explore somewhat in The Last Jedi, but I feel like, and honestly, I ain't gonna lie to you, like we talked about too, holiday season, they're rolling they're rolling Star Wars marathons out on every channel. Anybody who has any kind of inkling that they can run a Star Wars anything right now, they're running it. And so Last Jedi was on, and there's a lot of forced comedy in that they really don't force the comedy. It Comedy is best if it feels natural, and if it's not just like, we need a joke right there, and 10 minutes later we need another joke right there. It can't feel forced. You gotta have good timing with it. You gotta catch people maybe a little unaware, that kind of thing. But anyway, I am hopeful that they find the right way to continue the story. But like I say, there's too much money left on the table if they stop doing Star Wars. So I don't believe for a second that they actually intend to stop doing Star Wars. Just can't buy it.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, I don't think they will. And I mean, they they've talked about many directors actually doing Star Wars. Benoff and Weiss, who did the oh man, I don't know, Game of Thrones. But then the
mhm,
season finale of Game of Thrones, which I believe happened this year as well, was a complete disaster. And I guess, I
mhm.
mean, that's probably a good way to roll into some of these shows. Um, like for instance, I was a big Game of Thrones fan, and I thought that the ending was a little bit terrible. It was forced, it was rushed. They could have played that out for 2 3 more years. It was a beautiful series that just ended too abruptly. But I mean, there was a lot of other great series out there. I mean, drop some
Oh
for
yeah, man.
us.
No, well, we saw here at the end of the year the return of Rick and Morty. Um, I think that's a welcome thing by all accounts, by all nerds everywhere. We're glad that Rick and Morty showed back up. That's definitely one of them. Supernatural is ending this year, so they're at the mid-season point and will end in 2020. But then you go into shows that are directly comic book related. Um, Legion ended this year, and if you were a fan of Legion, it stayed trippy the entire time. It's definitely a show that has rewatchability written all over it, and it ended the only way that a show like Legion could end. And if you liked the show Lost, by all accounts, you'll enjoy the ending of Legion as well. So just kind of keep that in mind. The CW Arrowverse is going strong. That's one. And that even doesn't even get us to the ones that were at the top of the list for show of the year this year. Um, there are a couple of them that made it from streaming services, and I think we all know which one is the way. To paraphrase a saying, the Mandalorian has taken over basically everything by storm. So
Yeah,
that's one.
the voting might be people having that fresh on their mind though, because The Boys was also really incredible as well.
Mm-hmm,
I
mm-hmm.
mean that the guy that played the kind of evil Superman was just incredible in that movie or that
Homelander.
show.
Yeah, Homelander was,
Yeah.
man, he gave you the creeps,
Hmm.
like in the worst kind of way. This is the crazy part about that. All of this is we're talking about it. We've listed quite a few here already, and we haven't even really come to mention The Walking Dead, which in years past would have been at the absolute top of the list. I'm not sure it makes even the list this year because, to be honest with you, I've stopped following it. I still record it on the DVR in case if something amazing happens. I'm 20 episodes behind at least.
Yeah, I'm about the same with that. The DC streaming service had a couple of good ones, Doom Patrol and Swamp Thing, and unfortunately Swamp Thing had to end because of the whole recording stuff. And then Umbrella Academy, I believe that one kicked off for the second season this year. That was really good.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just finished. Oh well, one of my favorites is The Expanse. I mean, if you haven't checked out The Expanse, you have to. It's a great show. And then I just watched Witcher, and that was pretty good as well. Henry Cavill's in that one as the Witcher, and I like him as Superman, so it made it easy to enjoy with Henry Cavill.
Right. And actually, The Expanse was one I was going to remind you of. Again, guys, you guys know we try and cover a lot of different topics. There's just too much to cram into a week between the last time we record and this time, but The Expanse is definitely on my short list of shows to catch up on. Um, you know, it's one of those things, like you said, Umbrella Academy was amazing. We could do a best of television shows just on the shows that got canceled because the Tick got canceled this year, and so did Deadly Class. Those were two of my favorites. Krypton got canceled as well. We kind of talked about it a little last week that sometimes sometimes these channels, they're starving for content, then they get it and they don't know what to do with it. Those are those are shows that are going to go down with very small libraries that have great rewatchability, and in my opinion will gain a cult following if given the chance on streaming services, and more people will look back at it and say, crud, why didn't I watch this while this was on TV? This could have been a great show for 5 or 6 seasons if only I even knew it existed. which is, I think, part of the problem with the Tick. The Tick didn't get over because they got the Tick, and immediately thereafter they got the Boys, and they put a little bit of, it was a big deal at Comic-Con for the Tick, their premiere season. They then did the mid-season thing and then dropped the second half of the first season. They come back and do a second season, and by the time they're doing the second season, like we talked about before, we're both very plugged in. It was like a week before the season was supposed to drop, before their social media presence about the Tick had any kind of set leak photos, any kind of publicity, nothing. They straight dropped the ball. Now the Boys, they've been talking about the Boys dropping, the second season of the Boys dropping for a month solid already, and it's not here yet. So I think that 2019 will also go down as a year of gross mismanagement of certain intellectual properties that television, definitely could have done a better job with.
Well, yeah, now we're in the battle of the streaming services era where it's how can we get as much money, like so cable's done, right? So now we've got to replace that and take it over. And I mean, because like Netflix, we've lost all of our sweet Marvel shows that we watched,
Mm-hmm.
and some of those characters, I mean, they really grew on, I think, a lot of the fans. I mean, Luke Cage, Mike Coulter played Luke Cage, awesome, and the Punisher was awesome, Daredevil was awesome.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They really did a great job on all of them. And look, I know people poo-pooed Iron Fist and didn't care for the Defenders very much. On both of those, I don't think they had to bring in Iron Fist so they could do that version of the Defenders. They had to. I don't know that the Marvel universe was quite ready for him. He in my estimation, Iron Fist has always been that more zen character. So you're not going to get the fieriness out of him. He's an even-keeled, laid-back, for lack of a better term, kind of just like a weed smoker. He's going to be just kind of cool with everything a little bit, until it's time to lay the smack down. And when he does, he does. But then he immediately reverts back to easygoing and very zen. But there again, that's my impression of him. I absolutely could be wrong. I expect that somebody should let me know that I'm wrong in the comments if they disagree. I'm trying to think here of other ones, of other shows that we maybe have missed. We could go out into Lucifer and stuff like that. I believe that is Netflix picking up another season of Lucifer, because I don't think he's coming back on Fox.
No, I don't think so. I think I heard that they were canceling Lucifer.
Okay. Those are some of the real ones that I think we just couldn't go without. Teen Titans for the DC streaming service. I know friend of the show, Cam Hewitt, he's a huge fan of the Teen Titans show, and he's really on board with the Titans show. Now, interest of full disclosure here, I don't have the DC streaming service, so I haven't seen. I saw I saw Doom Patrol on I think it was a 7-day free trial or something like that, and it was great. But my trial was up before they started in on any of the other stuff.
You know what? There's one other one that I think I have to mention, Cobra Kai. I don't know if you've watched Cobra Kai, but my God, if you're talking about doing a show right, that was done right. The legacy characters were done right. I mean, that Star Wars could learn a lesson from that show, because the old time characters, Johnny and Ralph Macchio, were just perfect, and it was a wonderful show. I could have cared less about it until I watched the first episode of the first season, and I was like, wow, this is
Gotta
great.
see it. Right on. I know that again, that was one of those shows that took over social media when it debuted. And then, they've had a season end and haven't started any publicity for season 2 yet. I think they still are. The one thing that I enjoy about them is it seems as though they're not minding putting those fictional characters in uh in advertisement, because there is a I'm trying to think of what it was. It was something for a business licensing or some such thing commercial, and I think it was on a YouTube video that I was getting ready to watch, that they dropped it, and it wasn't Johnny, it was the old sensei from Cobra Kai, and my mind is blanking out here, unfortunately, guys. Anyway, he was talking about when he founded Cobra Kai, that he didn't do his business, he didn't set his business up the right way, blah blah blah. But if these people had been around when he set up Cobra Kai originally, he'd have really stuck it to them, or whatever. Anyway, I enjoy the fact that they're willing to throw some of that out there just to keep the show in the back of your mind, that it's still there. A little reminder, not a direct reminder, but subconsciously, oh yeah, Cobra Kai. Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. I think that, like you say, Star Wars could learn something from that. Not necessarily that they've got to have Wookiees drinking Coca-Colas or anything, but something to kind of keep them in the forefront of your mind a little bit better. Um, I'm trying to think here. I don't think I've got anything more on television shows. Uh, you want to transition over to our comic book awards?
Yeah, we can hit them. I mean, um, I'd start out with probably like the cover artists. I mean, for me, being a Hulk fan, having Art Ross doing the Hulk books has just been amazing. And
Oh yeah, Alex Ross has been amazing on Immortal Hulk. So he's at the top of the list. Um, Artgerm is definitely way up there as well for a cover artist. Um, I look at it, and we actually had two different sections that we did voting on, and Art Germ was our winner for popularity. Alex Ross, close second. Um, Personal opinion on it, I love Art Germ's fusion style. His fusion style is amazing. It is hot right now as can be, and I don't see it slowing down anytime soon. I will say Alex Ross has been prolific for years and years and years, always putting out the top quality, period, and is so undervalued on his covers. It's criminal. So, having
yeah,
said that, I don't know if I think that means Alex Ross should step back from being so prolific and maybe be more exclusive than he is. Because really, as a fan, I don't. As a fan, you want accessibility. As a collector or investor, you want something that you think may rise in value at some point. So it's a tough call to say, Alex, don't do 2 million different covers. do 6 covers in 1 year, make them all retailer exclusives or whatever, and be the hottest thing going.
Yeah, but the fact that he does do that, I mean, I think it endears him to fans like me who can actually go and buy that top tier cover of an Immortal Hulk and not have to have it be a 1 in 25 or something like that, you know. Not that I mean, Artgerm's kind of the same. Derek Chu's kind of the same. You know, they're putting their art out there. They're not making it so that we have to spend hundreds of dollars.
Right.
And I appreciate that.
Right. And I'll tell you right now too that I really believe that Artgerm is like I say, I love his fusion style. It's something that it deserves to be as hot as it is. It does. You know, like you say, we had 2 different sections there. The second section was breakout artist, and I threw out Guillermo. I'm gonna butcher his first name. I'm sorry. He won't ever know. Gilliam March, who again, he's been doing it for quite a while, but he's been a lot more prolific this year with multiple covers for Dynamite and DC both. But Derek Chu was our winner for Breakout Artist of the Year in the popularity contest. I actually think that between Derek Chu and bear with me for just a second here, guys. Derek Chu was great this year. Absolutely deserved the popular vote. Um, I honestly think Shannon Mayer did an outstanding job as well, and should have definitely warranted some consideration there for breakout artist of the year, because his work with the Comic Mint in some of their variants are just jaw dropping. They're just great. And some people look, some people are going to poo poo him because they think that he's a digital only guy. When we had that conversation on Facebook about whether he can act, somebody actually had the audacity to say, can he actually even draw? Insinuating that because he chose to do digital, that they doesn't have any talent. And somebody dropped in penciling that he had done and stuff like this, and it was every bit as amazing as what he does digitally. It was so good. It had reminiscence of Frank Cho as far as some of the detail and how he was developing the textures out and stuff like that. And I think to myself, well, no wonder he wants to go digital. You can be much more, again, we're talking about being more prolific, being hired on by somebody to do covers for you. Man, make it easy on yourself. You don't have to kill yourself. The Todd Father does primarily digital himself. So anybody that has an issue with people doing digital, take it to the big guy if you want to go there.
Well, you know, the only sad part about digital is that you never get that one original copy that was drawn, the very first one, the only one, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've said that to Jason Hare, who drew our comic. I said, Jason, you should draw one on paper just so that you have the original, you know, the original artwork. And if it ever blows up someday, then you've got that. And with digital, you know, you kind of lose that. But digital, there's so much you can do with it now. And I think it's not only being an artist, I think it's being, you also have to understand the software and everything. I mean, it does take a lot more than people really think.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, look, the other thing that you have to think about too is if you're doing it on paper, Once you get to the inking and coloring, there's no undo. So if you screw it up, if if the dog chews a piece off of it, if the cat wanders through and knocks colors over on top of it, guess what? You have to start completely over. We've it just I do think that you could do something to the effect of doing a limited lithograph style with a digital comic cover like that, and really limit it to 20 or 25 of them, and say these are limited lithographs. Once I do this one limited lithograph for everybody, that file it's not getting destroyed, but it's my intellectual property. We're not using it again for anything. And you see limited lithographs of fine art. Man, some of those limited lithographs, if they're done in the right way in the high enough quality, man, they fetch several $100s. I could absolutely see some of those limited lithographs maybe selling initially for $100 and then climbing in value up into the $500 or $600 if it's treated like the fine art that it actually is. Now, again, that's my opinion on it. Does that mean that it's 100% going to happen that way? I don't know, but I could definitely see that being the case. And like you say, that's whether it's digital or not. Um, and just like that, we were talking about artists. One of the ones that we didn't bring up and didn't actually. By the way, guys, all of these were kind of voted on social media and brought up on our Facebook page. Look us up on Facebook, join the group, get in the conversation, so that you can be included, so that you can have a say so in the direction of our show. Because a lot of people are having, we're having these conversations and it's sparking interest in stuff like that. Like you say, Derek Chu, he was far and away the winner for our breakout artist of the year. And I really kind of think that like you say, Shan Mayer should have got a little bit more love in there, but that's my personal opinion. Todd, you're our resident writer. Who was comic book writer of the year?
Well, I mean, I'm a Hulk fan, and so it's really hard not to go with L. Ewing and the work that he's done. Um, so I used to watch the American Idol show with a girlfriend like 20 years ago, right? And there's always like 3 or 4 people that you just watch and you're like, they're all good. They all deserve it, Like for me, L. Ewing, I thought has done an amazing job resurrecting the Hulk. Of course, Donny Cates has been amazing in everything that he's done. We haven't mentioned Ryan Stegman, but him and Donny Cates have been a really good team together through the Venom series.
Yeah, as far as a creative team together, for sure.
And then Jeff Lemire, he's every time that I find a book that I like, I find out that it's written by Lemire, and it's like, how many books does this guy freaking write?
Well,
You know,
and I will tell you, if we had a write-in candidate or spot for writer of the year when we did the poll, Jeff Lemire may have actually pulled it out as a write-in candidate because there was a lot of love for him. Now, just we all know our listenership has a definite bend towards Brian Pulido. He is constantly putting out. He's putting out Hell Witch. He's putting out stuff for the Lady Death universe all the time through Kickstarters. If direct dollars from fans were votes, he'd crush all the rest, to be honest with you. Because I mean, that intellectual property, if you were conventional, you would say that that intellectual property shouldn't exist. To be honest with you,
Well,
if you came to me and said we live in a PC culture, but we're going to have a comic book creator that is going to go rogue. He's going to do it all on his own. He's basically going to fly the finger at DC, Marvel, and Image, and he's going to do Kickstarters. And not only look, I don't think that Brian goes out of his way to be non-PC. He's not a dude that's like trying to offend people, but he is trying to tell people, I'm going to have a good time writing this, and the people that are reading it, they're going to have a good time reading it, and everybody else can suck it. Now, I'm paraphrasing. I don't think, Brian, if you're listening, I don't recall you ever having said that verbatim, but that's kind of, as an outsider looking in, part of what I enjoy about it. Is he doesn't have to say it, but that's kind of how the fans see it. Is you don't have to get it. You don't have to like Lady Death. Just know that all of us like Lady Death. So Brian Pulido got a lot of love from our listenership. Al Ewing and Brian Pulido tied, but Donny Cates was the far and away winner of Writer of the Year. And it has a lot to do with his work for Marvel with Venom and Silver Surfer Black, Absolute Carnage. He's going over to Thor here in the new year. He has done really good work almost everywhere he's turned up as well. And so, I mean, I can see why people vote for him. He's a really good writer. I enjoy his stuff.
well, yeah, and I mean, I guess if you go to the DC side, I mean, a controversial one would be like Brian Michael Bendis, but
What's
I didn't care about Superman at all. I read like the first 7 issues of Superman that he did, and I really enjoyed them. Um, I think he's done a pretty good job on the DC side. Um, I'm trying to think of any other
well,
right.
Tom King, whether you like him or hate him, he evoked an emotional response from people. And we did our WrestleMania show, and I know we have some crossover of nerds here where we like comic books, we like the nerd shows, we like wrestling too. You got to evoke an emotional reaction. You don't always have to like the fact that Batman got jilted at the altar by Catwoman. You don't have to like the fact that Wally West Flash is the one who murdered everybody in Heroes in Crisis. You don't have to like any of that, but you got to admit, it made you think and it evoked that emotional response. And, like with Al Ewing and Immortal Hulk, there's some emotional responses going on, and I'm only through the 10th book, and I'm thinking to myself, knowing what I know is coming down the pipes, he's laying the foundation for some of this stuff and has been since issue 1. So, there's reason to be encouraged that there's tons. And honestly, just like that, we haven't even mentioned Cullen Bunn, who's writing a ton of stuff on the indie scene.
Well, I mean, and when you bring up the Immortal Hulk, I mean, I think Joe Bennett does the interiors on the Immortal Hulk, and I mean, even those are spectacular. I mean, the Immortal Hulk has been a really, really wonderful book. Just resurrecting the Hulk. I mean,
Oh yeah.
and the Venom book. I mean,
Oh yeah.
Stegman and Cates and L. Ewing, Art Ross, and
Well,
Joe
and
Bennett have really been killing it.
absolutely. Well, and I'll put it like this. One of the reasons why I brought up Heroes in Crisis and Tom King is because over the weekend or just before the weekend started, I downloaded an app to my phone. You guys know that I am really more of a book in hand kind of reader. I'm not a digital guy really at all, but I just, you got to find a way to get some books in hand and do it a legal but free way if at all possible, because it's nearly impossible to keep up with the hobby, to be honest. I mean, they're just, you could spend hundreds of dollars every week and still not have all of the books that you want to read. So anyway, I download an app called Hoopla, which is through your local library, and it's one of those things that you kind of, you get a chance to read books, and if you do it the right way, you get 8 titles at a time. I'm going to start recommending some of them to the guys through the Facebook group.
A couple of the guys that I want to shout out, we had Adam Fields on here. Adam has got a book called Prowl, and I think people should check that out. I mean, he's an up and comer. And then also our friend Antonio D, who is unfortunately battling cancer at the moment, but he's got a book, and it's worth checking out his book as well. And then I have a book, of course.
Yeah. You and Jay, we don't want to go and not say anything about that, because that's something that, issue number 2 is coming down the pipes quickly on the crew. And Jason did a phenomenal job. And actually, I would like to, before we get to the end of the show, which I know is fastly approaching, it seems like there's always show at the end of the show that you're like, man, we didn't get, or I feel like anyway, didn't get to that part. I really wanted to get there. So I don't want to, but I don't want to rush through this other stuff too. I want to talk about goals for 2020, and I'll just skip to it. Jason Hare has said that he wants to do a Lady Death cover in 2020 if at all possible. And I think that the talent that he has exhibited in the work on the crew and the work in his commission work that he does for folks and stuff like that, I could absolutely see him doing a Lady Death cover and smashing it out of the park.
Yeah, I can't say enough good things about Jason Hare. I mean, you had talked about, you were thinking about writing a comic book, and I mean, Jason Hare is just an amazing illustrator. He's got a. I mean, what was really interesting doing the comic book was that Jason's imagination was as big as mine. So it was like we weren't. Yeah, I mean, it would kind of take you to like maybe thinking about Stan Lee and Jack Kirby working together. I mean, not to not to put us in that category, but I mean, each one had their own imagination, and they worked it together, and it swirled together into this perfect masterpiece. And I mean, that's kind of what happened with the crew. Was, I mean, I wrote the story. I kind of left it a little open for the artist to be able to express his own imagination. And I mean, Jason is just phenomenal at that. And I mean, so anybody, if you're listening to this, I mean, and you're looking for an illustrator, I mean, Jason is a great choice.
Right on. No, I don't doubt that at all. Because, like I say, reading the book, I a lot of times will tell people whenever they're asking, why do you recommend a comic book? The story and the art complement each other. The story and the art complement each other. It can be stylized art, it can be stylized writing, but they need to mesh. You can't have one overpower the other, and you can't have one that's just so subpar compared to the other. They have to mesh. If they mesh, that's when you see these all-time classics show up, and you see stuff like Kingdom Come, or you see stuff like you know, honestly, I think that Immortal Hulk, at least the first 25 or so books, will end up going down as one of the best runs for a reader that people will say, do you want to get into the Hulk? Here you go. Take these 25 books and read them. And look, I over this weekend, going back to what I did this weekend a little bit with the Hoopla app, I read all of Heroes in Crisis. I read the first 10 books of Immortal Hulk, and I read the entirety of Batman White Knight, which, for a year in review, that's from 2018, so we're not going to review that. But, that was under, I will say that was under the advice of Brian Camille, so I really want to thank him for that, because it was a really good read. If you haven't read it, pick it up, get a hold of it, find those books and read them, because it was really, really well done. So, you look at some of these things, and those are when you get the all-timers, the ones that you point people out, or like the Watchmen even, where you point people directly to those books and say, these are the books you got to read. If you're not reading these books, you're not getting the fullness of what comic books are. Because let's be real here, man. Comic books span horror, westerns, cartoon stuff, the Three Stooges, superheroes, sci-fi, the whole gambit. And that's what's beautiful about them.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, talking about going into 2020 and what what our goals are. The sad thing is the prices of comics have gone up so much. One of my goals is to actually cut down. And I mean, I hate to say that because I love comics. I love the comic industry. I want it to survive. And I know we've had other conversations about this, but I mean, that's one of my goals, aside from, getting the first appearance of Silver Surfer and stuff like that. I mean, books, the obvious type books that you'd want to find in nice condition. What are some of your goals?
Well, I'll tell you that my goals, and this is one that is one of the reasons why I downloaded Hoopla, is I felt that specifically for the podcast, I personally need to be reading more modern books. But because my real passion is not necessarily modern books, I don't necessarily want to spend the capital for them. I'd still rather go buy the old books. Now, again, Hoopla is free and it's legal. It's through your public library, so you have to go get a library card. So it takes a little bit of effort. It's not just download the app. But once you download the app, it gives you 8 titles a month to borrow. And if you do it the right way, like with me, I got collections, I got graphic novels, and you bust through them. Now, I will say I was out of town this weekend. The great thing too is you can do it offline. So you download it to your phone or whatever. And so reading more is one of my goals. But kind of like you're saying, I got to be more economical. I can't go out and drop. Just on those 3 titles, if I had picked up those 3 titles to read this weekend, I would have dropped $300 or $400 pretty easily, and that's just in trying to get the first 10 Immortal Hulk books, and then you figure in the rest, and not to mention I've got 5 more titles I can read through in the next month before I have to worry about either re-borrowing them or getting new stuff. But yeah, reading is one of them for sure.
Wait. You know, I can't wait till the library gets the Rise of Skywalker, so we could actually talk about that
Dude,
one.
I know, right? No, I imagine that will.
Just busting your chops.
No, I know, dude. No, I know. Hey, look, we talk about it. I'm a collector on a budget as much as anybody that's out there. Anybody that knows me knows that I am as addicted to hunting comic books as I am to making the deal. So, like, for instance, if I'm really, really shopping for a book, I'm looking for a smoking deal. So, like, for instance, I'm looking for Venom Lethal Protectors gold, the number one gold, and I'm trying to work a trade for it. I've got somebody who's interested. I've got about 50% of their asking price in trade. Now the downside is their book is autographed and already graded, so that means it's going to command a premium. I can't get around that. But the rest of it, if I can finagle a few books here, sell a few books there, I might be able to score the book. And it will be a deal because the books that I've kind of bought at a discount. That's one of them that's definitely on my list. It's been on my list for a couple of years. The other one is Hansi, the girl who loved the swastika.
Yeah.
Now, just so you guys know, we probably at that point, me saying that word means that this video will get reviewed, may get taken down for several days, and then we'll get put back up if they're willing to do the research on what that book entails, what that book actually is. It's a book about a girl who was raised, and it's an autobiography, by the way, of a girl who was raised in Nazi Germany. She was raised during a time when national pride said you are a Nazi. That's the only political party you can be. And so she was raised to love the swastika until she learned what the swastika was about. When she learned the truth, she also became a Christian, and she then started to fight against it. Okay? So it's a redemption story is what it is. Highly controversial book because it shows Nazi flags on the front, and it shows this blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl in the Lederhosen really smiling it up, and it grabs people's attention. And if you don't know what the book is, you have that, we talked about it before, you have that emotional reaction. Todd, Josh Biddle showed it on the Collector's Corner. You were
Yes.
just
I
this
kn- I
week.
know the book. It's not a book that you would put into a frame and hang in
You're
your
not
living
hanging,
room.
you're not hanging this one in the living room, but if you're looking for good conversation piece, this is one to get if you can find it. Now, again, this was used as Christian literature that was given away in a lot of cases. Like churches would buy cases of these books and then distribute them in the 70s, mind you, a much different time than we live in today. People would see the swastika, know what it meant, not be offended by it in the same way that they're offended by it today, but be offended enough by it to want to know, why is this person handing me something with a swastika on it, and actually look at it and then determine for themselves whether they should still continue to be offended or whether they should actually be thankful that they were handed it. You know what I mean? That's
Well,
kind of where they were at in the 70s.
I mean, and that's why it's important to actually read the comics before you judge what the comics actually about.
It seems like once every 6 months somebody will pick one of those up who has found out what it actually is and understands why they want to pick it up. By the way, it's one of the few Spire comic books that has an actual real value. There's 5 of them maybe that have really significant value. The rest of them you should be picking up for $1, $2, $3 at the most. but they are Bronze Age books because they're from the 70s primarily. But it's that one. It's The Cross and the Switchblade, the Johnny Cash autobiography. I'm trying to think here. There's one more that I'm blanking out on. But like you say, there's like 4 of them total that have any significant monetary value to them, and the rest of them, they're just like you say, they're 70s books. They were done by Al Hartley, who did a lot of the Archie books. They're just neat books to find out in the wild, just to kind of remind you of what the time period was about. Those are my 2 collecting like goal books for the year. But I'm always on the hunt for a smoking deal too. So I'd like to make 1 or 2 really smoking deals that don't involve those if I can this year too.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, my objective is to get Kathleen Kennedy fired. If that happens this year, then I've had a successful 2020.
So if it happens, regardless of whether you had a hand in it or not, you're calling it that you had a hand, and you're raising the flag. You're taking the day off work. You're celebrating like national holiday style.
Oh yes, yes. I've been hashtagging get fire Kathleen Kennedy for like every Star Wars post possible, just for the fun reaction that I get out of all of those. I mean,
that's hilarious, dude. That's so funny. And you know, I mean, they have somebody waiting in the wings that if they would just give him the reins, it's pretty self-evident that he would take it to the next level. They just have to have the stones to do it.
yeah, yeah, I think so. You know, I think we've pretty much talked ourselves to death on this one. I mean, you got
Yeah,
anything
man.
else, or you want to wrap this one up?
Well, let me just check one other thing here real quick, because like I say, there was we gave ours. I want to give a little bit of an opportunity for a couple other things. Because Cam Hewitt, you know, friend of the show, he was kind enough to answer the question whenever I came back. And like I say, a lot of people came back with I want to read more comics. I think that's an admirable goal. I think that anytime we're reading comics, we're doing it good. Cam wants to go to his first big con, probably Indy. He's over in that neck of the woods, so there's one that happens in Indianapolis that he'd like to go to, and he's looking to get his first appearance of Deathstroke back. Anybody knows of a smoking deal for Cam for that Teen Titans #2? Hook a brother up, send him a PM. Make sure you know he's going to pay through PayPal Goods and Services because he knows better than to get ripped off. Michael Palma, another friend of the show, his holy grail is Avengers 4. So he's got, those are a couple of guys that have those nice goal books in mind. I like those goal books. I think I've enjoyed my collection a little bit more whenever I have goal books in mind, and then I have lower tier goal books. It gives my collection more of a direction, and it feels less cluttered. But that's just me. So, and that is a show in and of itself. If you guys want to hear a show like that at some point, let us know in the comments. You got anything left, Todd?
No, I think I'm pretty good. I mean, you know, I just want to keep being able to afford comics and talk about comics and
Write
hope.
comics.
Yes. So that's all I got, man.
Right on, man. Well, guys, be good or be